All right, this is chapter 8. This is the rest of section 1. We're going to be talking about more revolutions because, you know, they're catching. And we worked through Haiti, and now we're going to look at Latin America. All right. Here are the maps that are from your textbook, so they should look familiar. But as you have Latin America before independence and Latin America gaining their independence and the fights that they went through, and then the countries as they sort of shook out later. First, we have to talk about colonial society. Colonial society in this time is insanely divided, and we looked at Haiti, and they had all these different names for people based on how, like, their color and how white versus native or white versus black, or, you know, how their mix was. So there was all these different gradations and names for that. And Latin America really isn't any different. And they've set their social classes up like that as well. So at the very, very tippy top is the Peninsulares. These are ones that are born in Spain. So they are pure Spanish, and they are over in Latin America running things. This is the very head of the colonial government, society, everything. Next step below them are the Creoles. They are full-blooded Spanish, but they were not born there. They're born in Latin America. They can become army officers, but they can never run the government. So they're never going to be at the very top, but they're pretty darn close. You've got mestizos, which is a mix of European and Indian or native ancestry. And you have mulattoes, which are European and African ancestry. And then, of course, at the very, very bottom are pure-blooded African, pure-blooded natives, the people who were either brought there against their will or who were there first. And, of course, they're at the bottom of society. All right, so the independence movement is led by Creoles, and which is interesting, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But one of the reasons, again, the same reason that most of our revolutions were sparked, was the ideas of the Enlightenment spread. All of these ideas of, you know, liberty, equality, natural rights, the ideas of Montesquieu and John Locke, and that a government must take care of you, and if they don't, then you have the right to get rid of that government, etc. And the American and French Revolution was a pretty good example of, you know, how this could happen and be successful. The first Creole we're going to talk about is Simone Bolivar. He was a wealthy, very wealthy Creole, and he leads Venezuela in their revolution. We're also going to talk about Jose de San Martin, and he was the revolutionary leader of Argentina. All right, Bolivar and his route to victory. Venezuela declares their independence in 1811. Remember, all of this goes down because Napoleon has invaded Spain. He has overthrown the Spanish monarch. He has put his brother on the throne. And most people in Latin America are like, I don't have to listen to you. I mean, I was barely listening to the king before. You're not even really the king. You're some French dude. I don't need to listen to you at all. So this is the perfect time to declare independence. And Venezuela does so in 1811. And Bolivar actually wins full independence and his war by 1821, which is pretty remarkable. In Argentina, we have San Martin, and San Martin leads the Southern Liberation Forces. So we're looking at Latin America sort of in the north and the south. And they declared their independence in 1816. And San Martin also lends a hand in Chile and helps them get their independence. And together, Bolivar and San Martin meet up and sort of awesomely join forces and finally drive the Spanish out of Peru in 1824. So they are really doing their part to free almost all of South America. But really what you probably care about is Mexico. So let's talk about it. All right, Mexico starts out, this is, actually know a little bit more about this. This starts out as one guy's sort of call. It is a priest, Father Miguel Hidalgo, and from a very tiny town in Mexico called Dolores. He is actually part of an underground society that's debating whether or not they should overthrow their local rulers and declare independence. Because, why should they listen to a French guy on the Spanish throne anyways? But when they are found out and someone tells him they know that you're meeting and they're coming to get you, he goes tearing into his church, rings the bells, brings everybody into the town square. Everybody's like, what, what's the deal? And he says, isn't it time you had your freedom? And he gives this stirring and amazing speech, and people are like, yeah, it is time I had my freedom. And 80,000 people within a few days are marching with him, and it's called the Cry of Dolores, or Grito Dolores. And they are marching towards Mexico City. Now there's 30,000 men, and when they get to Mexico City, and let's just say this was not well organized, nor was it actually nice. This wasn't like, we're here to get our freedom. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about Enlightenment ideals. No, this was slaughtering anyone that was Spanish that they found. In the town of Guanajuato, I think I said that right, they had this horrific battle with 500 Spaniards killed. And then they get right outside the edge of Mexico City. And this is what, historians still don't understand. Hidalgo calls off the attack. He backs down, which gives the Spaniards in Mexico City time to regroup and get ready for him. Now, some people say he was just like, this is not what I wanted. I'm a priest. This is bad. We don't know exactly why he called off the attack, but he did. I'm working, buddy. But the rebels, they just scatter because all of a sudden here comes the Spanish army. The Spanish army captures Hidalgo and his other leaders. They are shot in the back. It's a sign of dishonor. And Hidalgo, being a priest, is actually subjected to the Inquisition, and then he is also executed. Their heads were preserved, and they were hung on that building in Guanajuato as a warning to anybody of what happens when you rebel. Now, after Hidalgo is dead, Jose Maria Morales leads the revolution, but he eventually loses. But this is the first step. This is the beginning. All right, so what happens after that? Well, it's basically 10 years of civil war and the death of two of its founders. Thank God there's a pause button. I just had to stop and go get ice cubes. All right, so it's 10 years of civil war and the death of two of its major founders, and the independence movement was starting to die off. And what happens is the Spanish are like, okay, this is dying. Let's just kill it. Let's really get it gone. And so they decide to finally end the rebellion by sending a Creole officer, so a local, but who's got very strong royalist ties. And that's a guy named Augustin de Iturbide. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. I checked on dictionary.com. All right. So at the same time, in Spain, there is also another coup, a coup d'etat, and the king is thrown off the throne. And Iturbide is like, I could do what the crown wants me to do and stay number 2 on the level of society, or I could seize power and make Creoles who were born here number 1. And he says, yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. And so one of the reasons he actually switches sides and declares independence for Mexico is because he wants to preserve his privilege as a Creole, because what he's hearing is lots of talk of equality and liberty, and he wants that for him, but not for anybody else. So he really does not want to like free the poor and make this a great and equal nation with no more oppression. He wants to preserve his social standing. So he signs the Treaty of Cordoba, which frees Mexico from Spain. And his first request was that the Peninsulares and the Creoles be equal in status. Not that, everyone is free or everyone is equal or Spain gets out or anything like that. That is his first request, is that Creoles are the same as Peninsulares. This treaty also calls for a conservative monarch on the throne of Mexico. And he said he would accept a European prince as long as they, responded and answered in time. But of course, no one was found that could take the throne. And so he just, I guess he had to take it himself. So he ends up starting out as a fighter on the royalist side, switching sides, becoming Liberator for Mexico, and then declaring himself Emperor of Mexico. So Central America, it breaks away from Mexico. Mexico previously owned all of Central America in 1823 and becomes the countries you see here. So there they are. Now on to Brazil. All right, so we're going to talk about Brazil's royal liberator, because it's really interesting that Brazil, one of the biggest countries, was liberated by their own royal family. All right, so this is Brazil's royal liberator, and we're going to talk about this. Actually, it was a bloodless revolution, which is interesting. When Napoleon invades Portugal, the royal family bails and goes to their gigantic colony in Brazil and sets up their capital in Rio de Janeiro. And they actually like it so much that they don't really want to leave. But the Portuguese people get irritated after Napoleon's defeat that the royal family is not coming home, that they're living it up in Rio, and that's not like that's hard. But to keep tabs on their most valuable colony, in fact, maybe their only colony, the Portuguese king leaves his son, Dom Pedro, behind. And he says, okay, you keep tabs on this colony for us, for the family, okay? And so Dom Pedro's like, yeah, sure, okay. Now, while he's there, he realizes that it seems ridiculous that a country with the size of Brazil and the population of Brazil and frankly the wealth that Brazil was giving to Portugal should be subservient to Portugal. And so when the Brazilians say, hey, why don't we declare independence from your dad, and why don't you be our king? He goes, what a good idea. In September of 1822, he officially declares Brazil's independence. So this is the royal crown of Portugal. Oh, sorry, of Brazil. There is in the upper left-hand corner, that is actually the royal family. And shortly before they were dethroned, I think. And there is the summer palace. Okay, by 1830, nearly all of Latin American regions have won their independence. This is the current ethnic composition in the Americas, just to give you an idea. And that is really it. I'll be working on Chapter 8, Section 2, and hopefully I'll be able to go ahead and record that without small children in the room. You want to say goodbye, Will?
Goodbye.